in attendance. And, this conversation is really aimed at people who are probably a little further along in their career. They're a white collar professional who is either, climbing the corporate ladder, or alternatively, they may be have aspirations to move to a portfolio career. So what do I mean by that? I mean they want to move into boardrooms, board roles, or consulting roles, and so on. Um, but everything that I'm going to talk about today, and Fiona's going to talk about today, is equally applicable. Whether you're a fresh graduate out of university, or out of high school, right through to if you're a 65-year-old C-suite executive wanting to move into the boardroom. So uh, obviously there are some different nuances, and those nuances will be explained as we go. But for the broader audience, I think you'll find that most of the information will pertain to you no matter where you are. Now, this is the first time I've ever done. I've co-hosted one of these, so Fiona and I had to have a little chat beforehand to make sure that we got our systems and processes working, so we didn't end up talking over each other or killing each other. But what I might do firstly is just ask Fiona if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you. Fiona Cochran, for those that I don't know. I know in the many that have logged in for today's session, some many familiar names and some new names as well. I've been involved in executive search in the recruitment industry since 2001, so it's probably putting me north of my career, and have focused on predominantly more the not-for-profit and industrial sectors along the way. For the last 6 years, I've been head of client services with another organisation, but actually co-found Arete Executive with Richard 16 years ago, and have come back into the organisation last year. So looking forward to speaking with everybody. I have just gone through with the team, and any questions, just put them through the Q&A, and I can use that as a collation. But I've also had questions come through via the info@arateexecutive.com.au site as well. So we do have a number already.
And I think I just found the right button to turn on chat. So does somebody just want to send something to chat and just make sure that I can see it? Yay! Look at it, it all works. Hey, look, who said it? You can't teach an old dog new tricks, eh? All right, cool. So we've got chat up. So might get people to do it in chat because it's a bit easier for me to go backwards and forwards between the questions. So essentially, uh, the name says it all. Ask us anything in relation to your job search. If you want to ask us questions about, pet care, or, best places to go on holidays, probably we'd have some kind of answers, but not really the right forum. So let's leave it with questions pertaining to job search, but that could be both board or executive, or anything in relation to that. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we answer everybody's question before the end of the session. So if we only get three questions, then the session is not going to last very long. But if we get, 50 questions, then at least I'll answer all 50 questions. Fiona might have to go. And we have had a few questions sent to us preemptively, as Fiona said, through our website. So just start typing away your questions into the chat. And if I need any further clarification, then I'll ask for some. And Fiona and I are going to we're going to be like a tag team. She'll answer one. If I need to add anything, I will. And then I'll do the same. And then we'll hopefully get everybody's questions answered. So, all right. So the first question, which has been asked by Jared, which is a great question. I will go to that, but why don't we just start with a broader question, and that is, what's the market like at the moment? So, we get asked this question all the time. Oh, what's the market like? What's the employment market? Is there lots of opportunities around and so on? So Fiona, tell us what's the market like?
Okay. Um, so to put it into context, I've been just closing up a number of roles that in Sydney, and so obviously we work nationally. One in transport, a very large role, and one in a not-for-profit. We have had over 250 applications for one of those roles, and I think 170 for another role. And that includes us also proactively going out to market to search for ideally the square peg, square box for what the client is looking for. So I would say this time of year, candidates are very open to opportunities. And come back from holidays, they've had a break, thought about what they're doing, and the candidates are very ready for it. Is the market booming and there's lots of opportunities? And Richard will have a few cents to say about this one. I think it's a little bit slower than normal. And the reasons I believe, our clients are saying they're going to be hiring, so I will put that out there. But we've got a federal election coming up, so that's going to be pulled in April. So I find that the private sector does get a little bit conservative, particularly if there is wind that we could have a change of government. So they'll hold off for their hiring decisions, just in case they need to change strategy slightly. So that's number one. Number two, I think it's going to definitely be positive when we've got discussion around interest rates falling. So that's great. But I think, we work in cycles in recruitment, and normally the market opens up after Australia Day, and the market opens up post end of financial year once bonuses have been paid. So really, it's just the start of the normal cycle, and I'd say the market's okay. Yeah, there's no indications to say otherwise. Richard, what is your thoughts there?
Yeah, look, I'm the eternal optimist, and I say that market is always good because companies are always looking for good people. Excuse me, even in a market where, in a downturning market, companies have an even greater reliance and desire to hire good people. So the market is always good. However, one of the things that I've noticed during the whole COVID period, we remained extremely busy right through Christmas. And to the point where January just gone was our busiest month in 16 years. And we were constantly being amazed that we were being briefed on jobs literally, 2 days before Christmas. This year, that really slowed down. And so I don't think it's anything other than this sense of a return to normalcy where people used to historically say, look, between mid-December and, Australia Day, there's not much hiring going on. So I remember back in the good old days when we'd sell ads in the paper, we'd say there's no point in putting an ad in the paper because nobody's going to look at it until the 26th of January. So what we've had is probably a quieter period that I'm used to, but by the same token, already now in the sort of week after Australia Day, we're seeing the inquiry really start to ramp up. So I think that it's a good market to be in. The other thing I talk to probably on average 20 plus CEOs a week, and I would say that 19, if not 20 of them are very optimistic about next year or this year. You turn the news on and the world's going to end and World War III is about to erupt and all of these terrible things are going to happen and Australia's going into recessions and so on. But when I talk to actual business owners and CEOs, they are being quite bullish. So I would say my short answer to all of that is that the market's good, but you've got to get out there and make it happen. And this first question that Jared asked, which I thought would be a good way to start, was what are some good tips for identifying my employers of choice so that I can contact them? And I might just field that one quickly because people who have read my book would understand that what I talk about is reaching out directly to your employers of choice in order to get in front of them before they know that they need you. And obviously, the first thing to do is to think about, well, who would I like to work for? So, one of the ways to do that is obviously to look through lists. So, if you worked in the mining industry and you found the list of all the members of the Queensland Resources Council, or you could find other mining directories of that list out mining companies, that's great. You could also look at the top 500 ASX list, which is quite readily available, and run your eye down the list and pick out the companies there that you're attracted to. Similarly, there's the Australian top 500 private companies that you could run your eye down the list. But another way to do it, which people don't often think about, is if you look at somebody who is in a role that you're attracted to. So let's say you have aspirations to be a CEO of a particular company and you look at their LinkedIn profile, look at who they worked for before. Because often, if you look at who they worked for before, you might go, "Oh, I never even thought of that company." And it's also quite interesting because it's often a way of realizing that people do transfer out of industry. And so, getting an idea by looking at those people and looking at their career history and as a way of generating some new ideas, and of course, getting out there and talking to people, just getting out there and shaking hands and kissing babies and asking people, if you were in my situation, what would you do? Who would you think were organizations that I should target? And you'll be amazed that they might not only be able to give you suggestions, but potentially give you introductions as well. Okay, so let's go into the next question then. So this is a question from Sanjit. What is the best way to apply for a board position? Over to you, Fiona.
Hmm. Okay. So I'm assuming you're talking about an advertised board position. And anybody pursuing a board career, I would recommend that they do have some qualifications first, whether that be a governance institute or AICD. And no, not to be disparaging towards AICD, I think they're an amazing marketing machine, and obviously they've positioned themselves well that it is a requirement these days. But that would be number one. So get some qualifications to ensure that you can cover yourself from the governance, risk, etc., strategic side of things. Number two, it's understanding that like any employer, and if we're looking at a chair and their fellow board members, they need to be very comfortable that whoever they're going to be bringing onto that board as well, that meets exactly what they're looking for. So I'm assuming it's a skill-based board as well, so that you're going to have all of those requirements. So I would recommend that you apply to sit on a not-for-profit board, number one. It's getting some of that groundwork. If you've come from a very high-end ASX, executive leadership roles, and you've had a lot of board exposure, it is easier to transition straight into paid roles. But if you have not, it can be very challenging. And to put it bluntly, there's usually more applicants for board roles than there is for paid employment roles. Richard, do you agree?
I do. And so a few things to add to that. If I often say, and it's a pretty widely held belief, that 80% of the best executive roles are never advertised. They never get to a recruiter. They're never in the open job market. They're in the hidden job market. Well, if that's 80% for executive roles, for board roles, it's probably 95% plus. And the reason for that is that it's quite easy to put somebody on a board, but it's hard to get them off. So as a result of that, boards are quite conservative about who they choose to invite to join their board. And so if we say, well, less than 5% of board roles get advertised, and there's going to be massive competition for those board roles, then how do you get to uh, not only start but build out your board portfolio, once again, it's about identifying which are the boards that you would like to join. How do you get in front of the chair? And once you're in front of the chair, how do you remain a squeaky wheel without being a pain in the butt? And certainly, if anybody is on this webinar who hasn't read my book, Uncover the Hidden Job Market, if you go to our website, you can download a copy of that for free. And I talk a lot about this. And, I agree completely with Fiona. Board qualifications are essential for consideration. Even not-for-profits now, where they don't pay the board director, will put much higher preference on people who have done those qualifications. So something to really keep in mind. I'm not so sure about Directors Institute, but AICD, the graduate course, is not inexpensive. It takes time, and the assessment is quite hard. So, it's a serious commitment to actually get that qualification and then to maintain it through doing your professional hours every year and so on. But I'll give you two examples of two people that have been on my podcast. One of whom was a former partner at an accounting firm. And he was on my podcast and he said to me, "Look, Richard, when I decided that I wanted to be moved to a portfolio career, I mapped in my own mind who I believed the 80 most influential non-executive directors were in Brisbane. I put their names on a spreadsheet. I put the spreadsheet on the wall. I made sure every quarter I had some form of communication with every single one of those people. I spoke to them on the phone. I saw them for a coffee. I caught up with them at an event. Every quarter, every single person I communicated with, and within probably 18 months, had four or five excellent paid board roles. There's another guy that I know, and he's a former managing partner of one of the biggest law firms in Queensland. And I've known him for a very long time, and he's always had a very strong desire to be on boards. And I'll call this guy Fred, not his real name. And I said, "Fred, what you need to do, you need to identify the boards you want to join, identify the chair, get in front of them, build a relationship, blah, blah." And he said to me, "Look, Richard, I don't want to be seen going around town with my cap in my hand begging for board roles. People know who I am. They know where I am. If they want me, they'll come and get me." And this person, equally, if not stronger, personal brand than the other person, and yet in probably 12, 13 years has been on one board,
I
right?
think to add to that, Richard, I think that's such a good point because I think if you're truly seeking a board pathway, it's the mentor. It's identify who can be your mentor. And, whether it be AICD, Chief Executive Women, I mean, there's a lot of organizations out there that do have really strong mentoring support for women on boards. And I am sure there are still pathways as well for the men, so not to discriminate there. But I think if you can find a really good mentor, somebody who is an experienced board member who you align with, and you ask them, can you help me on this board pathway? And that would include their introductions as well. But it is a highly networked area. And I think the biggest challenge just comes down to trust. You need to be able to trust that this person is going to add value to the boards that you're sitting on with, and be able to partner with everybody there and also bring the diversity of thought. So it's a really challenging area and you do need to network.
Okay. There's a couple of other sort of quick board questions here. I might just quickly fly through those, and then we'll get into some of the chunkier questions. So, Paul, what is the demand for board roles with IT cyber experience? Well, boards are becoming much more diverse now. They need what they call a skills matrix. So back in the good old days, you'd have an accountant and you'd have a lawyer and you'd have a bunch of other people. Now they're saying we need an HR specialist, we need an IT specialist, we need a operational specialist. depending on what kind of business that they are. So once again, you absolutely would be considered strongly as a board director with an IT cyber background. Once you've done those qualifications and you're out there and you're meeting with those organizations that you think that you would enjoy working for and that also would value your skill set. And then I think Robert's asked, I've been on a number of private company boards in secretary roles and director roles. These are essentially insular and private. What would you suggest is a reasonable pathway to access advisory and formal board appointments? Get out there and talk to chairs.
Yeah. I think
Like,
if I can add to, sorry, Rich, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. To add to that, I mean, there is a formal group now, the Advisory Board Centre with Louise Brokeman, and they are bringing formal qualifications into advisory boards. But obviously, it's thinking about the professional services firms. So a lot of those partners, principals for private clients, they work very similarly in that advisory space, but they are always looking for really strong people to support their clients as well. So they would be a really good networking pathway as well.
the only thing I would say in relation to advisory boards is they pay rubbish
Mm.
and they're not easy to get onto. And often your risk is as much as if you were on a normal board. So if you're attending 4 meetings a year and getting paid $1,000 a meeting, so $4,000 to basically have personal liability for the solvency of that company, quite frankly, I don't understand why people would choose to do that voluntarily. But if it is, then obviously you need to be, really, really careful about your due diligence before taking those opportunities on. Okay, next question I'm going to read to Fiona, and Fiona can answer it. Okay, so this is from, I think, Margaret. Hi, my question is related to getting into government roles. Most C-suite roles I can generally find a contact and I can reach out to in my networks to get background information and even introduction. Government roles are all done through their website, and there seems to be no way to cut through. Any hints for these types of government executive roles? Thanks.
Good question, Margaret. I would suggest noting the last 6 years I've spent a lot of time in the public sector space. I think it's being known to the right people, number one. So within government, the Public Sector Commission are usually the directors and of what's actually going on, and they are key people to know. So that's number one. Obviously, it's ensuring that you're aligned to the government of the day. You've got that element attached to it as well. But I would reach out to, from a synergy perspective, and noting who I'm talking to, the most relevant Director General for the industry that you're coming from. And also, or it could be an Assistant Director General. So I would probably start down that particular path and just ask for a coffee meeting. So you realize very quickly that if your LinkedIn profile is obviously projecting that you are a senior person within the marketplace, they are very open to conversation. So I'm more than happy to have a chat to you offline about that a little bit more. But reach out to those key people. There's also the recruiters that do work specifically in that area and are trusted advisors as such to recruitment processes. So I would identify who the key recruiters are, because for any of the senior recruitment roles, government will utilise an external party to manage the process. And I think it's really important to know those recruiters as well. So hopefully that's a little bit that can help you there.
Yeah, I think one point to add, I talk in my book about the importance of reaching out directly to the recruiter and ideally directly to the hiring manager and trying to build a relationship so that you are given favorable consideration. in some instances, government have got a very strong rule on that. And if that is identified as going on, those candidates can be completely discounted from the process. So, one of the things you need to be cautious about is that if you are attempting to contact the hiring manager about a specific vacancy, you understand the rules of the game because you could end up missing out on a job that you could have gotten otherwise.
Mm.
So we do very little recruitment in government currently. That's not to say that we won't in the future, but for our business, we've been completely filled to the brim with both listed and corporate businesses and not for profits. So government's personally not an area I have a lot of experience in. Okay, next question. Now, the way that these questions come up, I can only see the sort of the beginning of the person's first name. So if I get it wrong, I apologize. I think this person's name is Darshan, and Darshan says, I have 15 years of experience in the manufacturing industry, working in an assistant general manager position in India. Now I've got my permanent resident visa in Australia, so I need somebody who can guide me how to proceed for a job finding marathon. Okay, well, firstly, don't assume that it's going to be a marathon, right? It might take a while, or you might find something, relatively easily. So just don't make any assumptions there. I have a bachelor's degree in metallurgy and a master's degree in operation research. I have got a certificate in business operations from TAFE. So, obviously, a very well qualified person, obviously got good professional experience. So, and now has permanent residency, Fiona. So, what would be your advice to Darshan?
Mm. Darshan, I would say it's obviously once again Richard's thoughts on getting out there and networking. Um, I think the challenge is obviously for new Australians. It's always, have you worked in this market, etc. Given your background, I would say that you would be attractive to many of the mining related organizations. So it's just demonstrating that you've got that. So I would probably I'd probably start with HR because a lot of those guys are still hiring. So I'd probably reach out to HR, but you may have to take a few steps back to go forward. So it's going to be, can you demonstrate that you can lead Australian teams without any challenges? And unfortunately, that's just how the market goes. And that's for anybody here. It's always, have you got the right story and can you demonstrate to give the hiring manager the confidence that you'll be a cultural fit and be able to lead their teams in the right way?
Now, I knew that there was going to come a question where Fiona and I would disagree, and this is the first
Mm,
one, so I'm
mm,
excited. Okay, my recommendation. So, firstly, Dash, we hire Indian people all the time. I mean, there are the Indian. I wouldn't hesitate to guess what the percentage of the professional workplace is, but it must be growing and growing and growing and growing. But
substantial.
you've obviously got a great command of speaking English. You've got great qualifications. You've got great experience. So the fact that you came from India versus, Brisbane isn't really a big deal, right? But the thing about it is that when you reach out to HR, I have only got a tactical orientation. HR are thinking, what jobs do I have to fill now? They don't have time to invest in giving generalist candidates a lot of job search advice because they're just too busy. And quite frankly, in between recruiting tons of roles and EBAs and all of the other stuff they get involved in, you're not going to get much success. What my recommendation is once again, your experiences in the manufacturing industry. I know Fiona said mining prior, but you know, the industries is look at the organizations you're attracted to. Look at the person who's in the role that is most likely to be your boss, right? So there'd be no point, for example, in you reaching out to the CEO of Rio Tinto, if you've been in an assistant general manager position, because you're just not at that level to be on their radar. So you need to think about, and it's very easy to do now because you can not only look at their LinkedIn, you can look at the LinkedIn profiles of the people in the company, but most companies will put on their website who their leadership team is. So if you're an operations person, then you might say, okay, I'm going to reach out to the operations manager, the chief operations manager, and you're reaching out to them. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this because it's all in the book. And if you haven't read the book, you can get the book for free. But you contact them and you say, I'm hoping you can help me, please. All right. I've just completed, these qualifications and gotten my residency. I'm looking for my next professional role. I'd really appreciate it if you could offer me 15 minutes of your time on Zoom or Teams to give me some advice about the market and where the right opportunities are. Now, note you don't say to them, have you got a job? Because if you say, have you got a job? They can only answer one of two ways. Yes, I do, or no, I don't. Or more likely, they'll push you to HR. And for the reasons I've just discussed, you don't want to talk to HR. So instead, you say, can you help me, please? Well, people love to help people. And then you say to them, I'd really love it if I could get your advice. Well, people, it's a bit of an ego stroke to be asked for advice. And can I have 15 minutes of your time? Well, 15 minutes is not a long time, right? So you're making it very easy. And the other thing you can do, Dash, is when you're looking at these LinkedIn profiles, find the LinkedIn profiles of other Indians because they've been there, done that, walked, they've got the t-shirt, right? So you can say, look, I imagine that when you came to Australia, you might have had some of the same challenges. What did you do? And they'll say, oh, what I did was da 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 da. And in fact, I know this guy who's looking for somebody, and can I make an introduction? So all you need to do is just get out there and shake hands and kiss babies and have conversations, which, fundamentally 95% of the answers to the questions that you're going to pose today, that is going to be the answer, right? But you've got to actually take action. But I think it's similar to a white man saying, excuse me, a white guy going, oh, I can't get board roles because I'm male, stale, and pale, right? That's absolute and utter rubbish. White men over the age of 60 or 70, or well, let's say 60, get appointed to boards all day, every day. If you were to look at the makeup of all of the boards in Australia, they are still predominantly male, stale, and pale. Now, that's not to say that getting diversity is a bad thing. Of course, we want more diversity. We want more diversity in age, in religion, in sexual orientation, in disability. All we definitely want that. But the reality is if you go in with this belief, this mindset, it's going to be hard for me to get a job because I'm an Indian, then, you're almost setting yourself up rather than going, I'm an amazingly qualified person. I've done all of these fantastic things. Any company should be delighted to hire me. Okay, the fact that I was born in India, who cares less? I was born in Canada. Um, we're all immigrants to some degree here, and so I think it'd be interesting to actually have a look at your CV. But which if you want to, you can send to me. But I that's the way that I would go about it. Okay,
Okay, I might throw one in, Richard. So
right.
Pauline sent some questions through, and I'd just like to focus on one of her first questions, if I may. I was a CFO of a large business, and I'll cut this down, Pauline. Um, and lost my job due to a new CEO, which happens quite regularly with change of leadership. It's been 12 months and I've picked up some contract roles, but they've been few and far between. For the roles I've applied for, I managed to get to first and second round interviews, but I haven't secured an offer. So, do you see people in my situation having to take a step back to secure work because but our clients unsure about an overqualified hire?
It's interesting because I was talking to a candidate who had a very similar experience, literally in the last week, of being told by a recruiter that the company had decided that they didn't want to hire him because he was too good for the job. And I had,
But we do have to say, if I just be fair,
right.
unfortunately, sometimes we've got to be a bit diplomatic with regards to how we share the response back from our clients. And I'm
Oh,
sure
look, for
many
sure.
executives on this call know that, yeah,
All right.
that's part of the, yeah. Mm.
Yeah. Anyway, quite frankly, I'd rather tell the truth than, make up a lie and have a person be totally confused. Look, the reality is that if you are an excellent CFO and you're highly credentialed and you've worked for a long time as a CFO, and I had a look at your LinkedIn profile before we started this call, then of course you should be a CFO. Why would you intentionally dumb yourself down and get a job that you don't really want because some people gave you some crap advice? Okay? The thing about it is, once again, recruiters are lazy and stupid. I wouldn't trust, now Fiona hates it when I say this, I wouldn't trust 98% of recruiters to walk my dog, right? A recruiter runs an ad, they get 200 applications, they find the 10 squarest pegs for the 10 squarest holes, and the other 190 people get told thanks, but no thanks. Now, many of those people could do the job standing on their head, but because then, the recruiter, again, lazy and stupid, they just want to fill the job, get paid, move on. The recruiter is not invested in putting a round peg in a square hole. Okay. So if you're applying for advertised roles, the competition for those roles is often massive, as Fiona mentioned earlier. In some cases, 200, plus applicants, right? Okay. Secondly, um, the often employers uh, aren't very good at hiring.
Mm.
They're great at running their manufacturing business or their technology firm or whatever they do, but they're not that great at hiring. The thing about it is that if you can get in front of the employer of choice before they know that they need you, you're not competing against the other 200 other candidates. You're not being assessed on, is this person, too big, too small, and so on. What you're being assessed on is, can you take away their problems and solve their pain? Right? And so the thing is to think about and move. And again, I'm not saying don't talk to recruiters or don't apply for jobs. If that happened, we would be out of business, right? So of course, you still do that. But if you think about your employers of choice and you get in front of, in your case, being a CFO, you want to be in front of the CEO or the managing director, and you say to them, look, if you don't mind me asking, what's the pebble in your shoe? What's keeping you awake up at night? Oh, look, we've got this big problem with this project and it's running over time and we don't have the resources and da-da-da and blah, blah, blah. And you can confidently say to them, look, if I could solve that problem for you, would that be valuable? They say, wow, if you can solve that problem for me, that would be amazing. And then you say, well, let me tell you when I did it before, right? They will hire you. They'll
Mm.
create a job for you. But of course, it's a numbers game, right? So what I say to people is I say, just an hour a day, just 1 hour a day. And in that hour a day, identify three employers of choice. Identify the three key decision makers. Reach out to them and connect with them on LinkedIn. Send them an email asking them for a 15-minute meeting. Three a day, 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 15 a week, right? An hour's work, probably not even an hour's work a day. You should get at least 2 to 3 meetings a week as a result of doing that. If you don't get 2 to 3 meetings a week, then you're either reaching out to the wrong people or you're not doing it the right way, in which case just read my book again, right? But if I've literally coached hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people through this, and I don't coach for money, I'm just talking about in hot, ad hoc kind of coaching and so on. If you do that every day for 12 weeks, I pretty much guarantee you will have a new job,
Mm. If I
right?
can just add to that, one of the things that I highly recommend to everybody when they're in job search mode is it's realizing that you need both your short-term strategy and your long-term strategy. So long-term strategy, CFO role, short-term strategy, you can do projects,
Of
etc.
course.
But as you're reaching out to these people and download your LinkedIn database. So go into the settings and download your LinkedIn connections so you can slice and dice your database of who you know and reach out to them saying, hey, I'm currently looking for my what's next. I am open to both, part-time and full-time, but I'd love to be able to pick your brains about the marketplace and what's happening out there. If you do that, that will help you get in front of them. And then you've got the two options. So you're not a threatening candidate going, as Richard said, do you have a job? Yes or no. It's like, I'm seeking your advice, but I've got a short-term strategy, long-term strategy, and that can help pay the bills as well. So it's
Yeah.
obviously putting the realism around it as well. Mm.
Exactly. But the last thing, imagine you go, oh, a bird in the hand's worth two in the bush. I wanted 300, but I've been offered this job on 200. I wanted to be CFO, but it's finance manager. I wanted to work in Brisbane, but instead I need to drive up and down to the Gold Coast every day. So a bird in the hand. So I'm prepared to compromise on all those things because I need a job. And then in 3 months' time, you wake up and you think to yourself, what the bloody hell did I take this job for? Right. And the main reason, and I'm not suggesting this about you, but 98% of people who read my book don't do anything, right? I'm saying to you, just reach out to 3 people a day. It's not hard. In fact, it's fun. You get to have all these fun conversations with interesting people that may or may not turn into a job. It's fun, but 98% of people, they don't do it. And I don't understand why. And instead, they end up taking an inferior job or remaining unemployed for longer than they should have. Because why? They're too scared to send an email. It seems crazy to me. But uh, definitely, you know, you have spent your career building a personal brand as somebody who is excellent.
Mm.
And if you truly believe that you are excellent, and of course I don't know you, but I assume that you are, then why on earth would you, sell yourself short? Okay, let's move on. Next
Okay.
question.
Do you want me to give you
Um,
one? I've got another one as well.
okay.
If I'm moving either to within Australia from a location or coming in from international, so it's joining a couple of questions. And I contact recruiters, but I never hear from them again. Like, how do I move to another location and present myself? Do I use recruiters? Do I not?
Well, again, you look for roles that are advertised where you want to be, and you look for the recruiters that are recruiting those roles, and you want to try and build a relationship with them. One of the biggest things that people do, which constantly amazes me, let's say I put up an ad for a CEO and I have 200 applicants, and of those, 20 of them get interviews, and 180 of them get the dreaded thanks but no thanks. Of those 180 people, how many people do you think ring me and say, "Oh, Richard, I'd love some feedback as to why I wasn't invited to interview"? I tell you, none. No, none of them. How often, Fiona? Once or twice?
Very
Everything.
rare.
Right. Now, if I know that Fiona recruits CEO roles in Brisbane and I want a CEO role in Brisbane, then it's probably in my interest to know Fiona Cochrane, right? It might even be in my interest, lo and behold, to offer to go out and buy her a cup of coffee, right? Now, because you want Fiona to know who you are, and what you're attracted to, so that then if roles become available, you are front of mind for her. Now, if you apply for a job and you get a letter, thanks, but no thanks, and you go, oh, well, who cares? I just apply for the next one. That's a terrible strategy, right?
But it's just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks.
Exactly, exactly. So again, if I
Mm.
knew that, pick a name, any name. Let's say I said, okay, I want to move to Hobart, right? So I would start to look at who are the recruiters who are recruiting the jobs that I want in Hobart, and I would intentionally work on building a relationship with them. Now, when I say 98% of recruiters are terrible, they're not all terrible, right? So if you reach out to those recruiters and you say, look, I'm moving to Hobart and I'd really appreciate it if I could have a Zoom call with you to introduce myself and blah, 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 hopefully they'll agree, because it's in their interest, because when they place you, they make money, right? So you are money to them. Okay, but at the same time, start to research who are your employers of choice in Hobart. Going back to our friend Dash earlier, if you are in manufacturing, who are the major manufacturing companies in Hobart? How would you find them? Is there a Tasmanian Manufacturing Association? Is there a Hobart Chamber of Commerce? Is there other um, industry groups or lists or ways that I can find out who are the major manufacturers? And then if my role is in operations and I think that I want to report to the COO, I identify every COO and I send every COO a message, and I ask every CEO for a meeting, and I have meetings, and that is how you'll get your job, right? During COVID, we were placing people from uh, outside of Australia in roles in Australia where through the entire recruitment process, they did not have a single face-to-face meeting with the employer. We also placed people internationally in roles, Australians into roles internationally during COVID, who did not have a single face-to-face meeting with the client. It was all done on Zoom and Teams. So really, it's just made the world so much more accessible, that geography is no longer a boundary. Of course, if you said, look, I'm going to come to Tasmania for a week, and while I'm in Tasmania, I'd love to get around and meet with, as many people as I can. Can you fit me in that week? Great thing to do. Probably a good investment, go down there for a week. But you don't have to do that.
Okay. So I've got another question, just to sort of change it around because we've had quite a few come through. With regards to your views on how do you negotiate salary packages?
All right. Do you want to answer that first?
Oh, okay. How do you negotiate salary packages? I would always say you need to understand, number one, your worth in market. So you need to do some research yourself. And there's a lot of information online these days, particularly if you're talking leadership roles, board roles, etc. Get annual reports. You can hunt a lot of information down. So that's number one. Number two, you also need to understand yourself personally. What is my number? What is my base salary number? What is my short-term incentive number? And what is my long-term incentive number? So, all those elements to it. So if I was talking to you about a role, I would be asking you, what's your salary expectations for this opportunity? Because I need to understand, are we playing in the same park or not? And if you're way up here, I would say to you blatantly, we're never going to get there. We're probably going to look at, down here plus plus. Does that look like something you'd still be interested in? But negotiating salary needs to be quite blatant at the front with whoever you're dealing with, whether it be an internal recruiter, a board, or an external recruiter. It's never done at the very end. There should not be too many surprises, because if you suddenly change your views on it and go, oh, you know what? Actually, I really want another 100 grand. that's when it starts to get very distasteful. Richard, your thoughts?
Well, firstly, I agree. Always sort money out at the beginning. Uh, and again, recruiters, internal recruiters, external recruiters, often, will disguise salary. So you should be able to ring, lo and behold, imagine if recruiters put their name and phone number on ads so that you could ring up and ask them questions. Wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't that actually make the recruitment process so much easier? But of course, they don't want to talk to candidates, so they don't put their name or phone number on an ad, right? So it's hard to find out the money. But assuming that you are talking to the person, um, and they say to you, um, so it'll go one of two ways. You will either say to them, what is the salary that they're paying for the role? Now, they should say, a quality recruiter should say, for example, it begins with a two. It might be a high two for somebody who's really fantastic, but it's definitely not a three, right? So they should be able, but what we tend to do is we will say to the candidate, let's assume that this job ticks every box. Great job, great team, great boss, great future, really excited, genuine job of choice with employer of choice. What would the money need to look like in order for you to be interested? Now, often the candidate, because they're asked, they will think, oh, I've got the power here, so I'm going to talk myself up. So they say, oh, 400, right? And
Mm.
if Fiona is going, well, my boss is only going to pay my client's only going to pay 200, well, she might say, well, look, I'm sorry, but I don't think this is the right one for you. Thanks for, okay, because candidates lie, right? Now, so not all candidates lie, and in many instances, I get why candidates lie because if you can get more money, why not, right? But you don't want to price yourself out
Mm.
of an opportunity. So typically, what would happen is if I said to the candidate, "What would you want?" and they go 400, I'll say, "Okay, well, look, in this instance, remembering that the role ticks every box, right? I don't want you to miss out on the opportunity. But let's say, for example, the employer could only pay, mid twos. Would you still be interested?" 95% of candidates go, oh, yeah, I'd still be interested, right? So suddenly they've gone from 400 to 250. But if you actually legitimately want and need 400, you need to say 400. And the recruiter needs to tell you the truth because a lot of recruiters will bring people through an entire recruitment process. It gets to the end, and then the boss and then the employer says, okay, I'm going to offer 300. And if justifiably the candidate goes insane, I've told you the whole way I want 400. Why have you wasted my time? And, I could tell you some horrible stories, of where clients have got it to a candidate that they absolutely love. And then for whatever reason, they decide to lowball and the candidate says, get lost. Um, Always sort it out at the beginning. And if there are other things that you need as part of the package, get those on the table as well. One quick situation. We were recruiting a CFO, a CEO for a company, and for whatever reason, the chair, his peculiarity, he doesn't pay relocation. He just refuses to. He goes, they know the job's in Brisbane. If they want the job, they have to get to Brisbane. Under no circumstances will I pay relocation. So this one particular candidate gets told that, yeah, no worries, that's fine. All good, I understand completely, reminded of it through the process. Gets to the end, offered this job, $600,000 job, and he says, oh, look, I'd like you to give me 3 months accommodation assistance. And literally, the chair said, out. Like, no opportunity for renegotiation, rediscussion, anything. The chair said, I was adamant at the beginning of the process. And now at the end of the process, this guy has decided I'm the preferred candidate. I'm going to ask for it. He's gone. See you later. right? So this is a critical thing. Remuneration is definitely not everything, but being absolutely clear at the beginning and then not changing on either side is imperative to getting a good result.
Okay, we've got a few quick ones which I can answer straight off. How do you find not-for-profit board roles? AICD, they've got a job board. There's an NFP job board, and I cannot remember the name of it. Richard, can you? It's a
Uh,
website, and many an NFP will advertise on that one as well. You'll see them on Seek. But I think for NFP, identify NFPs that you actually align to.
yep.
And that would be a great way to start, and then just reach out to the chair or start volunteering, offer some volunteering, and then at the same time say to them, you're very keen to get on one of the boards as well. So there's lots of ways to get into the NFPs. Is there opportunities for candidates outside of Australia? I think it depends upon the organisation, and that's where it's going to be. Usually you're dealing with organisations directly, and they'll be very specific when they advertise whether they are open to sponsoring candidates for leadership roles or not. I think in my experience, it's not as prevalent at the moment, and it comes down to demand and supply. Richard, your thoughts?
Once again, it comes down to the scarcity of your skill set. If you're applying to be, and also how critical it is to the role that you have a local network. If you're applying to be a sales manager for a company in Brisbane, and you've only ever worked in South Africa, and you have literally no relationships here at all, it's going to be tough, right? But if you are a radiation engineer that is required to shut down the Ranger uranium mine in Jabiru, which is a role that we recruited last year, then I think they ended up finding a female candidate in Germany. So, like everything, of course, it's going to be easier for you to find a job if you're here. Of course, it's going to be easier for you to find a job if you have the relevant qualifications and key achievements, within that industry. But nothing is impossible. It will just be a lot harder.
I've got another quick one here. What's the optimal length for a resume? Because a recruiter
Mm.
today told me 3 pages. My view on that is every recruiter has their views on what it needs to look like. So you just take on board enough. Number one, your LinkedIn is more important than your resume, because people only ask for a resume if there's a job there. And many times it's just to say, look, send me your resume because, I'll just put it in the drawer, and that makes you happy. So I would say your LinkedIn is more important, but resumes really, look, 4 pages. Some companies are quite specific about it. They'll tell you in their ads if they're advertising, but once again, it goes against the whole proactive campaign. But yeah, I'd say 4 to 6. If you're dealing with American companies, my gosh, you're looking at anywhere probably squished up into 2 pages in a 6 font. So yeah, it differs. Richard?
Look, every recruiter's opinion about length of CVs is wrong except for mine.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Your CV needs to be long enough to sell you. It's your sales document, right? It's pretty hard in an executive role to sell you in 2 pages, right? My if somebody sent me a 4, 6, 8 page resume, I couldn't care less. If it got to 12, to 47 pages because it cites every single academic piece of writing that they've done, how some of these people do, too much, right? But what am I interested in? I'm interested in, why are you sexy? Right? What is it about you that makes me go, wow, we have to hire this person? And that is quantified key achievements. So I would say typically 4 to 8 pages. Now, there is a I don't know if you'd call it a rule or a belief that when you're applying for board roles, you should only have a two-page board CV. Remembering though, that is for people who are board specialists, right? If you are an executive who is looking to move into boards, you are not being hired on your board experience because you don't have any, right? So you would just use your executive CV. You need to sell the sizzle, not the steak, right? Again, read my book. You'll understand what I mean by that. People want to hire people who do amazing things. As the CEO, I increased profitability by Z. I grew market share by Y. I reduced lost time industry injuries by Z. You know, think about those things that you're most proud of that you'd hang your hat on and you'd go, this is why I'm bloody good at my job. Problem is for a lot of CVs is they're full of responsibilities,
Mm.
but they're not full of achievements. So, they're full of, I led a team of 12 people. Yeah, but so what? Like, but I led a team of 12 people and, we grew revenue by 157%. Suddenly that's exciting.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, and for somebody who's been looking at a lot of resumes of late, I would say it's just being very conscious that whoever reads your resume gets the story. So responsibilities, very boring. That doesn't help me. Half the time, I don't know the companies that people have been working for. Put a URL link in there or put a couple of lines about what the company does, unless it's McDonald's or Coca-Cola. Many scenarios where I'll think, oh my gosh, who is that company? So then I've got to do the research. I've got to go hunting, look at the company and go, is there any synergy there? But then it's defining those quantifiable achievements. Who were you and what did you do? So what was your revenue responsibility, P&L responsibility, direct reports, indirect reports, and what problems did you solve for that organization? That's what gets you across the line. That's what gets recruiters going, oh, wait a second, I'm getting it. I'm hearing what you do really well. So therefore, I think I need to find out more. And it's realizing that your resume, the job of the resume is to get somebody to take action. Either they go yes or no. If you go
Yeah.
into the maybe pile, they don't get it. But
Yeah.
if it's yes, they're getting what you're doing. They understand the organizations and the problems that you solve.
Yeah, exactly. What I say is the only job of the CV is to get you to the meeting.
Mm.
So it doesn't need to be 10 out of 10, right? It just needs to be 8 out of 10. You don't need to slave over every word and make sure every sentence is spectacular. It just needs to sell, why are you awesome, right? Now, I don't know. I think I saw a question. We've got tons of questions here about, should I pay somebody to do my resume? Okay, now read my book, watch my webinar on writing CVs, and I think you'll come to a realization you don't need to, right? I've seen CVs written by professional CV writers, one of whom is in Brisbane, and I won't name them, but she charges thousands of dollars to write CVs and LinkedIn profiles. And I look at them and I go, this is terrible. Other times I'll see somebody's written a CV and they'll give me a CV and I'll go, wow, this CV is amazing. Who did you get to write this? And they'll go, I just did it myself, right? Writing CVs and LinkedIn profiles is easy if you've got a good framework. And again, I've got an entire webinar which is just on how to write your CV and LinkedIn profile. And if you contact us, and everybody here, I'm getting a few people go, oh, how do I email you, Richard? Or how do I email you, Fiona? Email info at arateexecutive.com.au, right? Don't email Richard T at Arete. I've just told you my email address because I get 800 emails a day, right? So if you want your email to get responded to, in 37 weeks, send it to me. If you want your email to get responded to within 48 hours, send it to info at arateexecutive.com.au because at least somebody much smarter and, more motivated than me is going to deal with it quickly. Now, we are over time. So I guess there's probably a few people who want to jump off. I did see somebody say, can we get a copy of this webinar? It is being recorded. We have previously made these webinars available, so I don't see any reason why we can't. We'll just get Yolana, who is our little, YouTube champion, to work out how to do that. And then if I can just didn't get a reaction to my.
I think one of the questions that I think is really worthwhile is, how do you get on the path to be an executive?
Sorry, say that again.
How do you get on the path to be an executive? Like, how do you literally get on that path?
Well, the first thing you've got to do is do a good job, right? So if you're coming out of your career and you're stepping into let's say that you do a degree in as an accountant and you go and work for an accounting firm. Now, one of the challenges that these accounting firms are having, and I know this because I talk to their managing partners, is that, younger people come in and they don't necessarily want tons more money, but they want to be promoted, much more quickly than people perhaps used to, right? So it's understanding that things take time. When you think about it, back in 1900, the average life, now this, don't quote me, this is exactly right, but average life expectancy of a white male in 1900 in Australia was 55. Well, average life expectancy of a white male, in Australia now, unless you're somebody like me who parties and, abuses their body too much, it's very likely you're going to live to be over 100, right? So it used to be, I've got to like get a career, get married, have some kids, buy a house, and then die. Because then now you've got so much time, so there's no need to be in such a rush, right? But the first thing is just doing your job well and making sure that your boss appreciates the fact that you're doing well and making sure that they're actually measuring and giving you feedback that you are doing well. And then if you get to a point where, you start to get a little bit itchy or somebody makes you another offer or whatever, go for it. Average
Yeah.
professional tenure in Australia has pretty much always been 3 years,
I
right?
think many large organizations, so if you are part of a large organization, many of them have leadership programs, but they also have mentoring programs. So where that's part of the portfolio of the executives, where they have to mentor people from other people's divisions to support them on their leadership journey. So have a look at that. But otherwise, also seek a leadership mentor. There are many very, very generous executive leaders out there that are open to helping people along their career path. But they need to ensure that, you're a motivated person who is doing well in your foundational work. Reach out to them once again, just like Richard's talking about, and off you go. But I think, that people want to help people be leaders. And I think the leadership path, one of the largest problems for most organizations, and I'm talking enterprise organizations, is that path to leadership. They can't get enough people that want to do the path to leadership because leadership is tough. So I think if that's something that you truly want to do, then definitely seek a mentor, have a look at getting some leadership qualifications. So some general qualifications beyond your foundational qualifications. And that could be an MBA, that could be a grad certificate. There's many things there to do. Richard, have you got any questions that you've gone through as you're trawling
So,
the mini?
sorry,
There are a lot there.
yeah, I'm just smiling because somebody who's left the chat wrote a very derogatory comment about us in saying that this is just Arete executive trying to steal people's money and blah blah blah, which I find quite a. But then on the other side of the coin, thank you, Richard and Fiona. Both amazing, great information. But this is one I like. I love the charisma you both display on screen. Thank you, Robert. I will. I might actually, frame that one. One of the ones that just came through right at the end was from somebody whose name I can't see. Average tenure 3 years, even in senior roles. Yeah, absolutely. Average tenure 3 years. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you're changing employer every 3 years, but you're changing role. So you might be the finance manager, and then you become the management accountant, and then you become the CFO, and then you become the CEO, right? But average professional tenure, 3 years. I actually wrote a magazine article about it a while ago because people were saying, "Oh my God, the Great Resignation." After COVID, everybody's leaving. It's like, well, they're not really, because average professional tenure before COVID was 3 years, and average professional tenure post COVID is 3 years. The Great Resignation, in my opinion, was it's like Y2K. A bunch of people are selling a whole heap of blah blah because they want to pretend that they're geniuses. Anyway, look, we are slightly over time, so we'll let you go. Thank you. Please note, I don't do any recruiting in Arete. So if you contact me and say, "Hey, Richard, have you got any jobs for me?" I'm going to go, "No," because I don't do any recruiting. The best way to see our jobs is to look at Seek and to subscribe to our newsletter. If
And the
you
LinkedIn company page.
Okay, LinkedIn company page. That way you'll be pretty much across all of the roles that we're recruiting. We have a whole heap of resources for people. We're just re-establishing a monthly networking drinks in Brisbane. We run
Monthly Ask Me Anything. So
uh,
we'll do this monthly as
we're
well.
we're doing this as well. We're doing another one of these, which is for the employer rather than the employee. So ask us anything about how to find a job, how to recruit good people. We are constantly trying to invest in the community because if anything, we want people to go out and, say kind words about us. But hopefully if we offer some advice which helps you to get a job, then our purpose is fulfilled. And Arete is a Greek word. It means the fulfillment of one's full potential. So that nothing makes us happier than hearing your success stories. But if 47 people come out of this meeting and say, "Hey, Richard, can I buy you a cup of coffee?" I'm going to have to say, unfortunately, no, because I don't have time to have 47 coffees.
Mm.
Plus, I don't drink coffee. But Fiona enjoys a coffee from time to time. Instead, come along to our networking drinks. Come along to, one of our functions where not only do you get to meet us, you get to meet the whole team. You get to meet, all sorts of interesting people that can help you, in your job search and your career. Any final words from you, Fiona?
No, but actually, yes, I lie. I'll get Yolana to send out to everybody the link to the book. So if anybody that doesn't have a copy of the book, so you can download that is actually on the website. So if you go to our website and you go to career support and uncover the hidden job market and just follow that, and you'll be able to download a PDF of the book. But I'll also get her to do a follow-up to everybody so they've got that. But thank you very
Excellent.
much.
Lovely. Have a wonderful evening and go forth and prosper.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much.
Bye.